Okay, from my knowledge najua so Netflix wanaitumia, kuna Tesla, kuna Google Translate. Yeah, so inakusaidia tu, ina make it easy for you.
Unapotafuta jambo fulani ama unapokuwa unatafuta kitu, liwe ni uimbaji, liwe ni umeingia kwa page ya mtu, then unapata kwamba kuna mambo ambayo yanatokea ambayo huko Google ambayo iko related na kile ambacho umeweza kugoogle.
Let's say you go and Google something in any platform on social media. It will bring you like other suggestions. Just like you can talk to a human being and ask them, what is this? And then he'll give you like the definition of what you want and give you other more definitions.
All right, Kenyan's take on how AI works. Varied opinions. And of course, the panel here will be telling me if they are right or too close or too far. Just before we took a break from this conversation, you are at the point of appreciating that AI is heavy on data, and it is data that drives it. Agnes, talk to us about, because like you say, your organization has been able to, go ahead of many, including, if you listen to the Kenyans they are speaking, they are talking about some of the services they use from Google. What does it take? Because Kenya has a lot of data, really, and the ICT Authority CEO alludes to that. But what does it take to convert that data to meaningful information that can be used for artificial intelligence to guide on decision making?
Thank you, Sam. Indeed, today I was telling one of my colleagues that if I went to any government ministry and I asked for a document from 1973, it will be found. So the data is there, and we've got tons of data. So what do we need to do to transform that data into AI platforms that then serve us from a productivity standpoint? The first thing we need is something called compute, and compute is just the processing power, right? So the processing power is represented through physical data centers that are located in country. It's also represented through cloud services. Cloud services is just being able to access processors using the internet, right? So that is fundamentally, very basically what compute is. So you'll always hear the word compute being thrown around when talking about AI. The second thing that we must prepare ourselves for is we must have people. We must have people who are trained and skilled to be able to then take all that data, right, put it through processors, build code that solves for something, because it has to solve for something, even if it's a game, right? Mm-hmm. It solves for entertainment. Put all that information through the processes and be able to solve for productivity and efficiency. So you need compute, you need data sets. Data sets, we need to take all this data that government has and convert it into sets that are consumable, and then people. Mm. Now, we talked about data centers, we talked about cloud access through the internet. It then means we need infrastructure. We must have good quality, affordable, and secure internet to be able to run the processes that then work on this. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the skills and some of the things like, for example, now we have a collaboration with Ministry of Education called Experience AI. It's a course that uses DeepMind for basic education, primary school education, actually, on how do we start educating young people on design thinking. You don't need a computer in front of you to learn design thinking. Design thinking is the foundation block for AI, right? Yeah. And then a vibrant ecosystem. Moses and his friends who go out and build and reimagine the landscape that we live in. So whether it's startups, whether it's just developers, a vibrant ecosystem that includes players, right, but also an extremely robust regulatory policy.
And when you talk about that, so what are you looking at in terms of resources, but also time?
So good AI saves time. So we must be able to invest. So you're asking about timelines. How fast can we do this?
Yep.
Now, this now brings up the conversation between the divide there is between where people are already and where we are as Africa, right? And if you speak with Stanley over here, he'll tell you they've been working overtime to get a lot of organizations to build data centers here in Kenya to provide us that compute. A data center costs a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars actually, right? And that is where most first world countries started. We can actually start on the other side.
Okay.
We can actually take a lot of money and invest it in developers, in our young people, for them to get the skills. Once they get the skills, they are able to build AI solutions off clouds. Even as we invest in data centers. I know Safaricom is investing quite significantly in data centers in Kenya today, and other organizations. While we wait for those significant investments to happen and get off the ground, we can actually start on the other end.
Okay.
We have amazing developers in Kenya, great talent that can build AI.
Stanley, talk to us about what that would mean for government, and if it is something that government would be willing to do, I mean, going through full throttle to implementing, or it's something that would require more of partnerships?
Indeed, we are very keen to keep up with emerging technologies as a government, and we have already set up the foundational pillars that will help us to achieve a fully digital government. And like Agnes has clearly indicated, if the institutions that keep data and keep it well for a long time is government institutions. So the first thing that we need to do, which we're already doing, is to digitize these government records and put the data in a format that, first of all, is accessible through these technologies, and also a format that can be shared across different platforms. The second thing that we must address ourselves to is the legal and regulatory framework that we must put in place. Before we talk about regulating AI, we must look at the basic framework that is required to support automation and digitization, and giving people access to digital platforms. So we are currently, looking at some of the acts that needs to go in tandem with this. For example, we require a digitization act. That then will help us to shape the framework and the policy and the context under which we digitize. We're also looking at the issues of governance of IDs, because the issue of digital ID then becomes central to digitization.
Okay.
And then on top of that is just closely to what Agnes has talked about.
Right.
We have a lot of data across government that has been built over time, a lot of systems that have been built over time. And most of these systems are sitting in silos. So we have a responsibility to then standardize this information and make sure that it is accessible. Previously we've been talking about consolidation of data. And over time, we have evolved from that, and now we are moving towards standardizing data from where it sits. So we are pushing more of a federated data system that is standard and accessible across board, rather than trying to bring the data together. Then that approach helps us to shorten the time period.
Okay, so I get that. I'm just wondering, once you have all that data in formats that can be transferred and can be manipulated, how then does that translate to an AI system? Would you know the sort of discussions or arrangements that are being taken to ensure that happens, and how soon?
So first of all, there's something that you asked, which I wanted to come to, is that we must collaborate with the private sector for us to be able to build these systems. And from where we sit, we're already doing it in some of the sectors. For example, in revenue, we're already building next generation revenue systems that are based on AI. In health, I think we have already defined what kind of modern health system we want for the citizens. And we're already doing that. And we have done that through the support and engagement of the private sector, because also some of these technologies are investment heavy, and we require support of this private sector.
Okay.
Partners.
Immaculate, let me get to you, because when all this happens, at the end of the day, there is a bit of exposure, especially those partnerships. There's a risk of who accesses that data, who manipulates it. And I hear over time, is it data sovereignty or something like that? What must then a government do to ensure that citizens' data is actually safe?
Thank you very much for that question. I think that is the reason why the Data Protection Act was enacted, to give us a framework and to give us an institution that can actually then ensure that this information is safe. That framework is adequate as it is, in terms of making sure, one, some of the requirements is that even as different government institutions or private sector are embarking on any form of what would say high risk. For instance, AI in health would be considered very high risk. They undertake what we call a data protection impact assessment, which really is like a risk analysis to be able to identify for you what are the possible risks, how are you going to mitigate it, are you sharing this information with a third party, and therefore they need to have third party agreements in terms of this. Will you be transferring this data outside of the country? And do those countries you're transferring this information to, do they have the necessary safeguards? Issues around, of course, what you've mentioned, data localization. Is it a requirement? Are you keeping a copy and things like, just to make sure it's safe? So the Data Protection Act is quite robust. And as an office, our work is to make sure that even as we embark on this journey of digitization and now this revolution of around artificial intelligence, we are securing people information. One of the direct clauses on artificial intelligence under the Data Protection Act is Section 35 about automated decision making. And the rights, and also what the Data Protection Act has done is brought the decision making to the customer. So that under that section, the customer, in this case, because our conversation today is around World Consumer Day, has a right to object. They have a right to object to their data being processed. So when they object to the data, it means that they have a reason to ask a question. The other thing that they have options, they can actually opt out of that kind of a conversation. That gives the power to the customer. So the Act makes it quite robust in terms of making sure the data is safe. Two, something I would like to just emphasize.
But does that translate directly to the consumer?
Does it? Now, the other part about that is the framework under the law. What then happens, the consumer can complain if they are affected in terms of if their data was used in a manner that they did not accept, if they objected to it, and their rights including compensation to the consumer. And we have had instances, not necessarily on artificial intelligence, where we've had complaints filed with our office on consumers and the data subject, and there has been compensation. To emphasize that, there has been penalties on people who have violated the Data Protection Act. The other thing I would like to say, because you asked the question about the government, is the issue around data sharing code. The data sharing code will help different government institutions, even as information is in different silos, they're able to share information across, and that is work in progress. It's one of the things that the Cabinet Secretary has set up, our Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Eliud Owalo, to actually make sure that that happens.
Okay.
The third thing that is very keen, that we are keen on in terms of making sure that this space of digitization is safe, is to actually do audits. As we speak, we are auditing over 40 institutions in terms of data. so that we are making sure they are not only doing audit, we are doing inspection to make sure that what you're saying you're doing with people's information is actually safe. So those safeguards in terms of audit, in terms of enforcement notices, in terms of penalties, are ways of making sure that even as we embark on the journey of digitization, people's information is safe.
Okay.
And you will be surprised that there's quite a bit of work and robustness as we compare 2 years ago to now. We are seeing action in people coming to ask to be assisted, to be given advisory, and the court has also has spoken to this matter of making sure that people are ensuring that people's data is secure and safe.
All right, let me come to you, Peter, because one of the greatest fears across the world is about the loss of jobs, and of course some of your interventions or innovations, for instance, the virtual assistant, it must have been able to do away with a bit of employees. But talk to us about that fear that this artificial intelligence is going to take away jobs, but also the opportunities that come in creating such kind of avenues.
Yeah, I think Sam, I think it's a great question, and I think and it is good to listen to ordinary people, because none of them actually spoke about loss of jobs. They actually talked about the opportunity they see in terms of the use cases for consumers, for society. There was a student there who talked about being enabled to do their assignment.
Right.
So I think if we come from a positive perspective, we will see huge opportunities in improving how we do things, the kind of productivity of it, the speed to market, how we take products to market, how we serve a large customer base and still be focusing on them individually. So if you start with the issues we are solving for society and for customers, and work backwards to how technology allows us to solve that, we are likely to actually come up with more innovations that allow us to grow faster. Actually, when you look at all the data on AI, that artificial intelligence will fast-track the growth in the world. Then, of course, how do you deal with employees? So our own experience in Safaricom, we have been on this journey for a few years. We've created a big data team. We've created, as I said earlier, data scientists and also engineers. We have actually increased the numbers of IT professionals because you need a lot of, Agnes talked about compute power, development, software development, and so on and so forth. For you to do a lot of this, to work through the AI and what is required, you need more people. I think the most important thing we are asking our people to do is to learn to use AI, not necessarily to understand the technical elements of it, but how can AI help me? So, for example, we enable our our care center to be better in serving customers, to actually understand what they should be telling, the next thing they should be proposing. So if you know a customer is facing a challenge, you already have the information to the customer. So instead of having to deal with that issue 3 times, you actually deal with it right first time. Right. So customer experience is improved. Actually, we've not reduced numbers. We have actually increased IT numbers. What we have realized is customers want more personalized service. So it is about how do we push the boundaries in using AI in areas that benefits the organization, whilst enabling our employees to transition, because technology will continue to improve. When we were in school, probably we were not using as many computers as we are using today. Today, high school students are doing coding. So technology will improve. How do we use that technology to enable our employees to improve their skills and capabilities so that they are future ready? As a country, we know we are a hub for technology. We've proved it, and therefore we can actually house a lot of what is going on in terms of as a regional hub to continue to develop. So today, for example, on the M-Pesa ecosystem, we have 70,000 developers who don't work for Safaricom, but who actually enable businesses to connect and to integrate with M-Pesa. So we can use this as an opportunity to actually propel our country to continue to move forward. So for those who fear and actually don't learn how they should use AI, they will be affected. But for those who do, I think their jobs will just be different. They'll be more effective, but actually they will be...
So eventually there are certain roles that will be rendered redundant?
There are certain tasks.
Yes.
There are certain tasks that will need to be automated through the whole AI process. However, the job will be different.
Okay.
You know, so it is enriched.
Yeah.
It's a role that is enriched. People may have to move to different types of jobs, because even within the IT area, when we look at the digital IT team, we are telling them all this coding in an artificial intelligence world and with Gen AI and all that, it will become their job will change. Their skills are still important, and their training are still important, but their job will change. The tasks will change. And all those things that we do repetitively, we talked about digitization and automation, will become, can be replaced, but actually new jobs will be created.
Interesting. I'll get to all of you, but DG, talk to me about, because I saw you in Barcelona and you're able to witness, see a bit of the technology on display there. How do you appreciate the gap between Kenya and the world, but your thoughts specifically on ethics? Because when you hear students saying that we're using ChatGPT to do our assignments, so is it an enabler or is it a cheat route, or what is that, and how do we regulate that, especially when people have years to adapt to the new technologies, but also they have to learn?
Other than regulating the ICT sector, one of the key mandates of the Communication Authority is to protect the consumer, and secondly, to ensure fair play amongst different service providers. Going to your question, there's a huge divide between the developed nations and sub-Saharan Africa. The technology you witnessed in Barcelona is quite something. But coming to the regulatory aspect, I think it will be good as we formulate our laws to ensure that we do not allow bias. We ensure there is transparency and equality. Other than that, the aspect of using chatbots, it's good and bad. Maybe it might help the CBC parents who don't go home early. Their kids will be able to use the chatbots to study. But equally, some studies show that sometimes it generates children to be dependent on machines to work, other than just thinking proactively as a human being.
And it's interesting because now you take us to the next point of risks in use of AI. But before we get to that in depth, Moses, talk to us about the opportunities that are available, because I mean, for you able to work in that digital space, what are these opportunities that actually ordinary Kenyans can tap into, whether they have a history of understanding tech or not?
So for me, I think I'd like to maybe cite a quote from Jensen Huang, who's the CEO of a company called NVIDIA. NVIDIA creates the processors that run most of the major AI systems that we're using today. And he said something back in November last year that this generative AI moment, what we're seeing with ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and so forth, is going to be bigger than the internet itself. Let me say it again. He said that AI is going to be bigger than the internet itself. Now, when you think about the size of the internet, the impact of the internet, it touches everything as we know it. And when you think about the opportunities, there's so many possibilities in terms of what you can do. I think there's the agriculture. We've talked about medical diagnostics. I know a hospital, for instance, in Nairobi, where they've used AI to sort of enhance how they do their diagnostics, specifically in the imaging space. So there's a test that used to be done that I think used to cost 25,000. It now costs 600 shillings. And the best thing about it is if you have, say, a fracture, it's able to actually analyze the rest of the tissue around your body and might actually be able to detect another illness like cancer without you even knowing it, meaning that it's so powerful that it actually surfaces illnesses that you may not even be aware of. So we see a lot of opportunities in these spaces. I think, whether it's medical, agriculture, within the typical business environment, I see a lot of opportunities around empowering the workforce to do more things. In fact, I have an acronym I call FESBEC, which basically means that if you're able to use AI as an individual, as an organization, you can do things faster, things become easier, they become simpler, you become smarter, so to speak, because when you use AI, it actually allows you to do things you couldn't do yourself. It also allows you to create better outcomes in the work that you do. And most importantly, it also can be cheaper, all right? So we're seeing this sort of opportunity for young people to go out there, acquire the skills, become data scientists.
Right.
People are going to need to train the models that actually run AI systems. Today you have foundation models, running the AI platform. So you have to train it, you have to label the data, and then once all this is done, you get to the process where somebody can actually interrogate the data and get the outcome, whether it's an image, whether it's language-based, or even videos that we're seeing now are even possible through AI. But literally, there's almost a completely blank canvas in terms of what is possible, because the script, as it were, or the playbook is still being written. And it means that whether, pretty much in any kind of use case, you will find an AI opportunity. So I would say that the opportunities are massive.
Right.
And if you have creativity and the skill sets to do so, and the compute and the platforms that you can use to actually do so, then really there's really no limit to what is possible.
Right. Alice, earlier on in the story that we ran here to set the stage for this conversation, I hope you remember the Lisa show. And before getting interviewed by Lisa, there's a part that you have to sign that you consent that they can use whatever information you're giving out there. So it looks like it's some form of entertainment, but essentially what they're doing, they're collecting feedback from you, which can be analyzed in the background. So as we move into this space that different consumers will be using, but also the data will be used by different AI machines across the sectors and across companies, what should we be thinking about that even the developers and the users must be aware of?
Oh, thank you so much. First, I want, before I respond to that, to just jump in quickly and maybe just bring our DG to spot. Sometimes when they go around collecting views about laws that need to be improved, it's very rare that they involve consumers. I mean, we are an organization, an umbrella organization of consumer organizations, about 10 of them, and this is the second umbrella organization for consumers in Kenya. And none of our members has been invited anywhere when these forums are going on. So as much as we are talking about legal framework, please don't preach to the choir. Don't talk to yourselves. Come out here, and we want to work with you. We are ready to work with you. We want to go to the grassroots. Like, for example, we have consumer desks, like Consumer Grassroots Association. We have 4 consumer desks at the counties where your staff can go and liaise. And we are collecting consumer complaints. Actually, AI is enabling us to collect consumer complaints. When they go to the platform, they are able to record the complaints, and we synthesize those complaints, and some of them fall under data privacy. So our concerns is that sometimes we are so enticed. Some of the consumers don't know what is out there. And that's why I began by saying that whenever you come up with a product, whenever you come up with an innovation, please ensure that consumers know. Google, ensure that consumers know what products are made for, the kind of products that you have out there, and the consumer protection aspect that you've taken into consideration, and let it be plain, explained in a language that a consumer, the grassroots, can understand. Because when you talk of data, that government has a lot of data, I almost asked you, what sort of data is that? And how is that data collected? Do you have the consent of a consumer for you to utilize that data? And what if we realize that our data has been misused? What are we going to do? Where do we report? What are the redress mechanisms that we can get out of that? And there's a lot of misconception and misinformation out there because our understandings are very different. And so we need a robust system that is going to enable us to educate consumers. A day like today, I was expecting that when they come here, instead of dwelling much, I know they're talking a little bit about consumers, just a pinch of salt. But most of the things they're talking about is about the businesses and how the businesses are doing well. I expect that such a kind of a time is time to educate consumers. Tell them, you know what, we have this kind of law. And this, when you go to our Safaricom shop, when you go to the Google platform, this is how you are supposed to conduct yourself. And this is what we were expecting such a day. Remember, the theme for this year is fair AI, fair and responsible AI for consumers. Yes, I know businesses are now coming up and saying, you know, we are doing 1, 2, 3, but tell us, how is it fair for consumers? Because we want to feel protected. We want the laws of Kenya under Article 46 of the Constitution to be really actualized. When you are talking about the Data Privacy Act, we want to know how is it operationalized and to what extent the penetration has taken place. These are some of the areas, these are some of the things that we wanted to know. During this day, we want to dwell much on educating consumers. Let them know their rights, their responsibilities, and the responsibilities of the duty bearers and the responsibilities of the developers. So those are the aspects and the gaps that we're experiencing as consumers, because we receive a lot of complaints. As I'm speaking right now, last year we received 2,772 complaints from consumers, from our consumer desks, and some of them have been taken to the duty bearers. They have been addressed, but some have not been addressed. So basically, what I want to bring on board is this: consumers are a great and a large number of consumers. They don't know their rights when it comes to the usage of these AI devices, AI platforms. So it's high time, as much as you are doing business, can you please set aside a portion of your resources and sensitize consumers? And you know, us as consumer organizations, we are ready to work with you. A coalition of consumer organizations, 10 consumer organizations, can spread all over the country, and we will make your work quite easy for consumers to understand how to use the devices. So these are the limitations. Consumers don't have the literacy, they don't have the know-how. Most of them don't have the know-how, even though they're using those gadgets. And even sometimes when they use, they have misinformation.
Okay.
Yes.
And we will get back to that point. I think there are a few people that deserve right of reply. I'll give you that opportunity, but first we want to take a short break here. You're still watching tonight. It is the Artificial Intelligence edition. It can have different meanings, but we have to have the conversation to seek understanding. We're back in a moment. Stay tuned.